Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to this week's card. This week I'm using a stamp that I've had for quite a while but just haven't gotten around to using. It's called A Drink a Day and it's by There She Goes Stamps. You can see it there. There's a ton of stamps in this set. So I'm going to start by using some Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and there's a certain order you have to do these stamps in so that they fit just right. So first I'm going to do the table, then I'm going to do the girl, because I want to make sure she's sitting right next to the table, and then I'm going to do her wine glass right in her hand. Alright, I am starting with some Copics here, W1, W3, and W5, and I decided to start with W3 because I didn't want to go too dark. So I'm just doing the edges, and the tablecloth is supposed to be pretty much white, so I'm just adding some shadow. So now I have W1 that I'm working with, and I went and got a 0, and I'm using the 0 to blend the W1 into the paper, so that just sort of fades out. Then I decided I needed a little color on that center piece right there, so I just used a W1 and a 0, and now I'm going to go in with the W5 and just add a tiny little bit where the edges are. And then I'll cycle back through to blend, which was the W3, then the W1, and then finally the 0 to blend it all out. Now my table, I'm just using two colors here, E43 and E44. So I did an all over E43 first, and then I just added some highlights with the 44. The wine glass I slowed down a little bit. Now I'm using a very dark red R89, and I'm going to do a thicker line on the left and a thinner line on the right because my light source is coming from the right. And then I'm going to take my R29, which is a bright red, and I'm going to blend those two sides together. And then the important part, to make it sort of a crystal look, I took my 0 and I used my chisel tip, which I hardly ever do, and I just kind of chiseled my way up pretty quickly. I don't want to leave it on there too long because it'll take away too much color, and it just added enough to make it look crystal. And then I took a C1 just to make it look glass, and just added a little bit of that to the left hand side of the glass. Alright, now I'm starting on her hair. I took a E30, which is the lightest one, and I marked the highlight. And now I'm starting in on either side, and I'm going to start dark first and move toward the center. So I did the E27, which is my lightest, then the E34, and now I've got E31. And then I went back with my E30, which was that lightest one I started with, and I decided it was too dark, so I took the 0 and I just removed some color, which is the great part about the 0. And then I decided to add some dark areas kind of toward the back of her head because there'd be a shadow there. And then I just worked my way back up with the same color scheme. I'm going to use this technique on all the different pieces. Now I treated her hair like a bunch of different chunks, and so I identified the highlights first with that E30, and now I'm working my way with those other three colors toward the E30. And so just blending them as I go. So here's my darkest, and then the medium, like the dark medium, then the light medium, working my way to that E30, which is my lightest color. Now here's another chunk of hair, and there's going to be a shadow there because you've got that chunk that's in front of it. And so I created some dark hair behind it, and then the part I'm coloring right now is going to be behind that piece, so that's going to be darker. So as you work your way back with the pieces of the hair, they're going to be darker because there's not going to be as much light reflection. So once again, starting darkest and then moving my way through the different colors till I hit the lightest. And I'm just going to add some darker ones here at the bottom because they're going to be covered by her arm, so you're not really going to get much light down there. Now these areas in this image are so small and teeny tiny that it's really kind of hard to use a lot of colors, and you don't want to use too much ink, because then it all blends together. So it's kind of a balance that you have to strike here. Okay, so with her dress, I started with an R81, which is the lightest. I did all over. And then I did a very, very tiny line of the R29 because it is a very bright red color. And now I'm moving through from dark to light with my other colors. Same with the bottom, and notice I'm working in pieces, because if you work in too big of an area, then the markers will dry a little bit and they won't blend as easily. So I like to work a little section at a time, and also makes it more manageable so it doesn't seem like such a huge project. So once again, I started with my all over light, and then I worked in just a little bit of that R29 because it's so bright, and then I worked my way backwards from darkest to lightest. And at the very end, I felt like the top was a little lighter than the bottom, so I took my 0, which was, again, the great part about the 0 is, and I just pulled some color out to add a light reflection. For her skin, I just used 2 colors. Again, there's just, these areas are so teeny tiny that you really can't use too much color. Too much variation, because there's just not enough room. So I used 2 colors, and I try not to color it too much. So I started all over E00, added a couple of highlights with the E30, and then went back with the E00 to blend it together. And so I'm moving through this pretty quickly. There's really not that much blending going on here because the arms are so thin. I notice I added a little bit of a shadow where her dress was, because you're going to get a little bit of a darker area there. So in all my areas, the lighter part is on the right hand side, the dark part's on the left hand side. Okay, now I'm using the same colors I did for the table stand, which is 43 and 44. And I'm creating a shadow right where she is against the chair, because she'll kind of create a shadow when she sits down. So right behind her is going to be the E44, and then the rest will be E33. And then where she sits, there'll be a little shadow there. And again, just moving through these pretty quickly. Small areas, so you don't have a whole lot of room to blend. And then I went back and created a little shadow on the floor. And this is with the W3. Yeah, sometimes I spend way too much time on the shadow, and then it gets bigger and thicker, and so the best thing is to just do a very light touch of a shadow and just be done with it and walk away. Now her eyes, I just used some markers because again, it's just a small area. Now the sentiment I wanted to break up into 2 parts, one for the outside of the card and one for the inside. So what I did was I used a post-it, and it created a straight line for me, and then the part I wanted on the inside came out on the post-it. And then I'm going to use that reverse, the reverse side to do the inside. This is some early espresso marker, and I'm just going to freehand some lines across. The key is to keep your hand pretty much still and kind of move your arm instead of your hand. Now I'm onto my background. This is the Distress Dots background stamp, which has been retired by Stampin' Up, so you can only get it for about another month, and then it won't be available anymore if you wanted to get it. And I'm just using it on some early espresso paper with some Versamark ink, and I'm embossing it with some white embossing powder. Now my image is going to be off center, so I'm just marking the middle of the left-hand side, and I'm going to cut some strips of baker's twine, and I'm going to just wrap them so that they're all right next to each other. So the line I marked as the middle is where I put the center string, and then I put the other two on either side. Now I'm just straightening them out and wrapping it around. Now I'm going to pop up my panel with the girl with some foam adhesive dimensionals. And then I have these glittery, they're sort of glittery plastic pieces. I'm not sure who makes them. They're just in this clear bag that I have, so it doesn't even have a label. And I'm just going to put a glue dot behind it. And I'm going to use 3 of them, and it kind of balances out my color. I actually decided to move them up a little bit. And then finally the inside, I'm going to use that same sentiment I used on the outside. And now I'm going to cover the top portion of it and just leave the bottom, and that's what I'll stamp on my card. And that's it. It says whether you think your glass is half empty or half full. And then you open it up, and it says it's time to ask for a refill. It's so cute. There's a lot of different sayings in this set. It's really cute. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.